Hey Book Dragons, welcome back to my channel. Today I am doing my November wrap-up. Let's go. So I had some lofty goals for November. If you watched my original video talking about my goals for November, you'll know that I labeled this Poevember. I set out to do 30 days of Poe with one story or poem each and every day written by Edgar Allan Poe. And so I had a real blast with that, and I'm just really excited to talk all about how Poevember went for me. And I think I may do this again next year. It was quite a bit of fun. We'll see, but I really enjoyed reading through Edgar Allan Poe's stories and poems, most of which I'd never heard before. Some I had. So let's go ahead and talk about it really quick. I did do 30 different stories, and I'm not going to go into all of them here for the sake of time, but I am going to touch on some of my very favorites. So the first one I want to speak about is one that's familiar to pretty much anyone who's read Edgar Allan Poe or heard of Edgar Allan Poe, and that would be The Raven. It's one of his most famous poems, and if you've got the black raven who keeps saying nevermore, nevermore, and it's just amazing. I did the immersive experience with this. I listened to the poem being read by Christopher Lee. Now, if you know Christopher Lee, which if you don't, I don't know where you've been living, but if you know Christopher Lee, you know how creepy that experience was. Creepy in a good way. There is no better way to read The Raven than having Christopher Lee read it to you, in my personal opinion. So that was a really great experience. I also read The Telltale Heart, which is one of Poe's longer form stories. Not super long, of course. All of his stories are pretty short. But The Telltale Heart is just absolutely a brilliant tale. So Poe is a master of the macabre and the creepy and just getting under your skin. So I'm really happy I got a chance to read those. Those are two of my all-time favorites. And then I had some new ones that I hadn't really read at all. And I'll go over those here. One is The Haunted Palace. It's an old broken down palace that still has the souls that lived in it who have now departed roaming around the palace. Really creepy. The Mask of the Red Death. I think this had to be my favorite of the new stories that I've read, just because you've got this ruler who takes all of his retinue with him down into a catacomb, another kingdom that he has constructed in the catacombs and locked away from everything because there's this plague raging outside, and he doesn't want to risk the death of himself or the death of those that take care of him and serve him. So he takes them all with him into this locked bunker of sorts. I guess you could call it a bunker. And they had this masquerade party, and no matter how tightly locked away they are, death still seems to find them. And it was just, oh my gosh, one of the best short stories I have ever read. Just fantastic. Another one was The Black Cat. I really enjoyed that one. And also The Pit and the Pendulum. That was really fantastic. I'd heard how good it was. I'd never read it before. Just about this guy that's imprisoned in this torture chamber, but it's not physical torture. It's more mental torture. It's more emotional torture. almost trying to get him to think that he's dead, and there's still kind of a question there as to whether he is actually dead or he's not. So it kind of leaves you wondering at the end, or at least it did me. And I love stories like that where I'm kind of left to my own conclusions, if you will. So that was just a really, really fun time. I'm so glad I did the 30 Days of Poe. And I did a whole bunch of others. I did Harmodius, Lenore, the Sphinx, the Bells, various different poems and stories. The City and the Sea. I did a whole bunch of them. I won't read them all off here, but if you're interested, I can put a link to like a spreadsheet of the ones that I read. If you're interested in that, you can find that down below. I'll figure out a way to link a spreadsheet to it. So aside from Edgar Allan Poe, I read several other books in November. I read Death on the Nile by Agatha Christie. Just another great Agatha Christie novel. I am never unimpressed with Agatha Christie. Just a phenomenal mystery writer, and I have a blast reading her stuff. And Hercule Poirot is the main detective in this story once again, and he's on holiday in Egypt, and he's trying just not to work. He's just trying to enjoy himself, and lo and behold, someone turns up murdered, and he reluctantly takes the case. Just fantastic. And the cool thing about it was, I've read this book before, but it's been a long time since I've read the book. And I've seen movie adaptations of it too that are really, really good. If you want to check out the adaptation with Peter Ustinov as Hercule Poirot, it's a fantastic movie. There's a new one coming out next year that's kind of a continuation in the series created by Kenneth Branagh, and with himself in the title role. And I'm looking forward to seeing that one and see what they do with it. But there's some great adaptations of this. But I got off on a tangent. What I wanted to say was, even though I've read this book before, and I kind of thought I knew who the culprit was, it still kept me guessing left and right. Like, I went into it and some characters were introduced. And I'm like, oh, I think I remember who did this. And then as I was reading it, I'm like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not remembering this right. And then a couple minutes later, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm pretty sure I was right. Maybe it's this person or whatever. And then so she kept me guessing the whole time until right up to the very end, when everything is revealed and who did it and how they did it. These are books that can easily be rereads and still extremely enjoyable. So I had a blast reading Death on the Nile, and I buddy read it with my friend Christina, so she and I are hopefully going to be doing a live stream discussion on that sometime here in the near future. Okay, so stay tuned for that. I read Blood of Elves. It is the first of the full-length novels in the Witcher series by Andrzej Sapkowski. And really, really good. I'm not going to do full reviews for all the books in the Witcher series. I'll probably wait until I've read all the books and then do one whole series review. I will talk about Witcher Season 2 once I've watched it, and I'll do a video sharing my thoughts on that and what I thought of it compared to the books. But I really enjoyed Blood of Elves. It wasn't my favorite of the three I've read so far. I read The Last Wish, Sword of Destiny. Those are the two short story collections, and then this is the first of the novels. So I didn't like it as well as I did the first two, but it was still really good. One thing you have to know about the Witcher series is it's very, very heavy on dialogue. At least the first three books are. Blood of Elves especially, it's really dialogue heavy. There's some action and there's magic and stuff like that, but overall it's heavily laced with dialogue. And some people may like that, some people may not. It did get a little old for me, I'll admit, but I still enjoyed the story overall. I don't know if it's I don't know if Polish, because these books are translated from the original Polish. I don't know if Polish tends to be a much wordier language when it's translated into English. I don't know. So that could be part of it. But I really enjoyed Blood of Elves. And I'm looking forward to seeing the TV show because with season 1 of The Witcher, they did a pretty good job of adapting it from the books. They stayed pretty right on beat with the first book anyway. Some of the stories they pulled from the other books, like Sword of Destiny and Blood of Elves. So I hadn't read those to know how close it was to those, but now having read those, I'm like, oh, I remember this from the show. They did a pretty good job. So I'm looking forward to seeing season 2. I read Salem's Lot, and I do have a book review for this one. I'll leave it in the cards at the end of the video and in the description below, so you can check out my video review for that. I will say it was a fantastic read. It was the fastest I have ever read a Stephen King novel. It was just non-stop, and it is my favorite Stephen King novel that I have read. So I'm really glad I got a chance to read that in November. That was kind of a last-minute addition. I'm like, well, I don't know if I'll read it, but maybe if I get a chance, I will. And I did, and I'm so glad I did. Guards by Terry Pratchett. This was my first foray into the City Watch series, which is part of the larger Discworld universe. And I had read one other book in Discworld before and wasn't a great experience, so I was trying it again, and man, I am so happy I did. Guards was a phenomenal book. I also have a review for that, and I will link that in the cards at the end of the video as well, so that you can check that out. I was laughing at almost every turn. It was just so much fun. So you definitely should read it. Check out my review. And the only book that I did not read that I had intended to read in November was Fire and Blood. Or I should say, I intended to start Fire and Blood by George R. R. Martin. It's a historical reference book, prequel to the Song of Ice and Fire series. I had intended to start it in November, and I didn't get to it. So I put it into December. I will be reading it in December. And that's it, guys. That was my November. All in all, it was a really great month, and I just had a really enjoyable time. And that's the biggest thing, right? Is if you're going to read, be able to enjoy what you're reading. At least in my personal opinion, reading should be for enjoyment. And I enjoyed every minute of it. So there you go, guys. I'm going to end it there. Let me know in the comments what you thought of my video. Have you read any of these books? Have you read any of the Poe stories or poems that I read? Let me know what you think in the comments. And make sure you are reading more books. I'll talk to you soon.